There is a fine line between peace and chaos, and we love to explore that tension in every video. Watch as the pressure builds and the truth finally explodes in a burst of cinematic energy. Hit subscribe now and witness the breaking point for yourself.
At my husband's retirement dinner, with 43 guests raising glasses around the longest table I'd ever seen, my 16-year-old granddaughter grabbed my sleeve and pulled me toward the courtroom. Her hand was shaking. "Grandpa," she whispered, "I need you to come with me right now, and I need you to not make a scene when I show you what's on my phone." I almost laughed. I thought she'd found something embarrassing, a photo, a rumor, something teenagers blow out of proportion. I was wrong about everything that night except one thing. She was the bravest person in that room, and she was the only one trying to save me. I'm going to tell you what happened. But first, where are you right now? What time is it where you're sitting? Drop it in the comments. I want to know who's listening as I take you back to that night in Savannah. My name is Gerald Whitmore. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the city of Savannah, Georgia, and 4 months ago I retired. My wife of 38 years, Donna, had planned the retirement dinner herself. She'd booked the private dining room at Forsyth Park Inn, exposed brick, candlelight. The kind of place that feels like somewhere important things happen. She'd invited colleagues, neighbors, our pastor, her book club, 43 people who'd watched me leave the house at 6 every morning for 3 decades. And she'd invited our son, Jeffrey, and his wife, Renee. They drove up from Hilton Head. Jeffrey wore a jacket I'd never seen, something expensive that didn't look like him. Renee kept touching her phone, turning it face down every time I looked in her direction. I noticed the way you notice a splinter, small discomfort, easy to dismiss. I dismissed it. My granddaughter Ivy is 16. She's my daughter Trish's kid, and she has her mother's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness. She'd driven up with Trish that afternoon and spent most of the cocktail hour attached to her phone the way teenagers are. I didn't think twice about it. The dinner was everything Donna wanted. The prime rib was perfect, the bourbon was good, and my old supervisor from the city gave a toast that made half the table laugh and the other half cry. Donna sat beside me glowing, wearing the blue dress she saves for occasions she wants to remember. 38 years and she still makes me feel like I won something. Then Ivy was at my elbow. She didn't say my name. She just took my arm the way you'd steady someone who was about to fall, quiet and certain, and leaned close enough that only I could hear her. "Grandpa, courtroom. Now, please." I looked at her face. Teenagers don't look like that over nothing. I excused myself from the table. Donna caught my eye and I mouthed 1 minute, and she smiled and turned back to Mrs. Culpepper from the book club. Jeffrey watched us go. Just for a second, his eyes tracked us across the room, and then he looked away too fast. The courtroom was narrow and smelled like cedar and old wool. Ivy pulled the door halfway shut and turned her phone screen toward me. Her hands were shaking badly enough that I had to take the phone from her. "I was sitting in the back hallway near the kitchen," she said. "I was texting. They came down the hallway and they didn't see me. Uncle Jeffrey and Aunt Renee, they were talking and I started recording because something felt wrong." She pressed her knuckles against her mouth. "Grandpa, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do." I looked at the screen. A voice memo, 3 minutes and 40 seconds long. She recorded her uncle and aunt planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. "I'll tell you what I heard," Renee's voice first, low and quick, the way she talks when she's in problem-solving mode. "The neurologist signed the preliminary evaluation last week. Jeffrey has the documents in his bag tonight." "Jeffrey, she doesn't know about them." A pause. "He doesn't know either." Renee again, "After tonight, it doesn't matter. Your father signs the retirement paperwork. We filed a petition Monday. His doctor has already documented the episodes. Jeffrey, he doesn't have episodes." Renee and her voice dropped. "He does now. Dr. Terman, Boss A filed 3 incident reports in November. Confusion, disorientation, impaired judgment. We've been building this for 5 months." Jeffrey went quiet. Then, the house. "Renee, listed by end of the month once we have medical guardianship. $740,000. The retirement account is separate. We'll petition for financial guardianship simultaneously. Your mother gets a care facility. A good one. She'll have everything she needs. Jeffrey, barely audible. What if she fights it? Renee, completely calm. She can't fight it if she's his codependent. Reframe her as compromised too. She's been covering for him. A door opened somewhere, and the recording became muffled footsteps, and then silence. I stood in the coat room holding my 16-year-old granddaughter's phone and listened to my son and daughter-in-law describe how they intended to take everything my wife and I had built over 38 years. Ivy was watching me. She'd gone very still, 16 years old, and she'd walked into this party carrying this alone. "How long have you had this?" I asked. "Since 20 minutes ago," she said. "I came straight to you." I handed her phone back. My hands were steadier than they had any right to be. Somewhere down the hall, I could hear laughter from the dining room. Donna's laugh, bright and easy. The laugh I've known since we were 26 years old. "There's a man at table 7, Ivy said. "He came in late. Sat alone. He's been watching you all night." I looked him up. She held up her phone again, a LinkedIn profile. "Dr. Marcus Fossey, neurologist, private practice. He's the one who filed the incident reports. Uncle Jeffrey introduced him to me as a colleague. He's not a colleague. He's been here the whole time waiting." I looked at the LinkedIn photo. The man in that photo was sitting 30 feet away at my retirement dinner, waiting to conduct a cognitive assessment designed to document my incompetence. I called 911. The dispatcher asked my emergency, and I gave it as clearly as I could. My son and daughter-in-law are attempting to fraudulently establish medical guardianship over me tonight. They have a doctor here who has filed false medical reports. My granddaughter recorded the planning conversation. I need officers here before they can file anything Monday. The dispatcher, patient, professional, told me officers were en route. 12 minutes. Stay on the line if possible. Do not confront the individuals directly. I looked at Ivy. "We go back in," I said. "We act completely normal. Stay close to your grandmother. If anyone tries to take her anywhere or puts anything in her drink, you come to me immediately." Ivy nodded. She wiped her eyes fast, the way teenagers do when they don't want you to see them cry. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I can do that." Walking back into that dining room was one of the harder things I've done. The table was loud and warm and happy. Donna was cutting the retirement cake. She'd had it made to look like a drafting table, which is exactly the kind of thing she does. Jeffrey stood near the bar, topping off his glass. Renee sat back in her chair, scrolling her phone. Dr. Foss sat alone at table 7 with an untouched glass of wine, positioned at an angle where he could observe without being observed. Jeffrey saw me come in. "Dad, everything all right?" "Battery on my phone," I said. "Ivy helped me sort it out." He looked at his daughter. Something moved across his face. Assessment, calculation, and then he smiled the way he smiled since he was a boy, wide and easy, the smile I used to think was purely his mother's. "Good man," he said, and touched my shoulder. "Great night, right?" "Great night," I said. Ivy slipped past me and sat down next to Donna. I watched her take her grandmother's hand, which Donna thought was sweet. I knew what it was. It was a 16-year-old girl making sure she knew exactly where her grandmother was. 20 minutes is a long time when you're watching a clock. Dr. Kralomani, Bosse rose from table 7 at the 15-minute mark and moved toward Donna with the unhurried confidence of someone who believes everything is already arranged. I stepped between them before he'd taken 3 steps. "Dr. Foss." He stopped, surprised I knew his name. "I don't think this is a good time." He recovered quickly. "Gerald, I'm just here to wish you congratulations. Jeffrey mentioned you've had some concerns about—" "I haven't." I kept my voice pleasant. "And my wife is having a conversation. Let's not interrupt her." He studied me for a moment the way doctors sometimes do, like they're running a checklist. Whatever he was looking for, he didn't find it. "Of course," he said, and stepped back. Jeffrey materialized at my side. "Dad, Dr. Bosse is here as a—" "I know why he's here, Jeffrey." My son went still. "I know about the petition. I know about the 5 months of preparation. I know about the incident reports Dr. Fossey filed." I kept my voice very quiet. Around us, the party continued. "I know about the listing on the house." Jeffrey's face changed. The easy smile didn't disappear. It sort of calcified, froze in place over something else underneath. "That's not," he started. "Don't." I said it gently. I wasn't angry yet. I was something quieter than angry. Just don't. Renee appeared. She'd come around the back of the table with her phone in her hand, and her expression rearranged into concern. "Gerald, I don't know what Ivy told you, but she misunderstood." "She recorded you," I said. "In the hallway." Renee stopped moving. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I watched her process this. The part about framing Donna as compromised. That was the part that really clarified things for me. The lights went out. Not a flicker. Not a power surge. Every light in the dining room cut off simultaneously. And for 2 full seconds there was nothing but the sound of 43 people inhaling at once. Then the emergency lighting kicked in along the baseboards, pale and greenish, and in that strange low light I saw Jeffrey move. He went for Donna. He didn't grab her. He took her arm the way you'd help someone cross a street, authoritative and smooth, leaning close to say something I couldn't hear. Donna looked confused. The room was confused. In a power outage at a dinner party, a son leading his mother toward the exit looked like exactly what it was supposed to look like. I crossed the room in 4 steps. Let go of her arm. "Dad, I'm just getting her outside. The building is fine." I put myself between them. "Step back, Jeffrey." He didn't step back. He's 41 years old and he's had 41 years to practice looking sincere. "You're not well," he said, and his voice had shifted into something I recognized from the recording. Not his voice, not exactly, but a performance of his voice, careful and measured. "Dr. Foss can confirm there have been incidents. People at your office have been concerned for months. We've been trying to protect you." "From what?" "From yourself." His jaw tightened. "The house is too much for you and Mom to manage alone." "The finances. You don't understand what you signed last fall." "Gerald." Donna's voice sharp and clear. She'd pulled her arm free herself. "What is happening?" I took her hand. "I'll tell you everything, right now. But first," I looked at Jeffrey. "I need you to understand that this is over." Ivy's voice from somewhere behind me. "The police are here." They'd come in through the service entrance, 2 officers in uniform, and a plainclothes detective who introduced herself as Detective Carla Mead. She was methodical and quiet, the kind of person who makes a room settle down just by standing in it. She asked everyone to stay seated. She asked Jeffrey and Renee to remain where they were. She asked Dr. Foss, who'd moved toward the front entrance, to please come back. Renee said something about lawyers. One of the uniformed officers asked her politely to lower her voice. They found the documents in Jeffrey's jacket pocket. The neurological evaluation. The guardianship petition. A letter from a care facility in Pooler called Magnolia Ridge, confirming a reserved intake appointment for a G. Whitmore the following Tuesday. They found the second set of documents in Renee's bag, financial power of attorney paperwork, already completed, listing Jeffrey as sole authorized agent over my retirement accounts, the house, and Donna's inheritance from her mother. Donna had never seen those pages before. Detective Mead asked us to come to the station. She said it gently. She said Ivy would need to provide a statement as well. Ivy, standing next to Donna with her grandmother's hand wrapped in both of hers, nodded like she'd been expecting this since the courtroom. 43 dinner guests watched my son and daughter-in-law be escorted out of my retirement party. The station was quiet and fluorescent and smelled like old coffee. We gave statements for 2 hours. Ivy sat between Donna and me and gave hers steadily, without tears, every detail of the hallway recording accounted for. Detective Mead told us what she'd already begun to piece together. Jeffrey and Renee had been working with a man named Clement Hurst, financial consultant, semi-retired, with a specialty in what he called family asset transition planning. His practice had been flagged twice in the past 3 years by the Georgia State Bar for involvement in contested guardianship cases. He'd connected them with Dr. Turn, boss, who provided fabricated evaluations in at least 6 other cases across coastal Georgia. The network was small but practiced. Financial advisors, a cooperative physician, a care facility that collected intake fees regardless of how the admissions were obtained. 5 months. They had started building the case in June, 2 months after I announced my retirement date. The incident reports Dr. Fosse had filed, 3 reports documenting my supposed confusion and cognitive decline, had been written in November without my knowledge, without any clinical contact. He'd based them on reports from family members. Donna sat very straight through all of this. I've known her 38 years, and I know what she looks like when she's holding herself together by force of will. She looked like that. When Meade showed her the financial power of attorney paperwork, her name on documents she'd never signed, her mother's inheritance listed as an asset to be transferred, she pressed her lips together and looked out the window for a long moment. Then she looked back. How many other families? She asked. Meade hesitated. In the Hearst network specifically, we believe 6 confirmed cases, possibly more. Where are those people now? Most are in care facilities. The guardianship process moved quickly in their cases. Reversing it is, Meade paused, complicated. Donna nodded slowly, but not impossible. That was the moment I understood something had changed in her. Not just shock, something that had found a direction. Ivy pressed charges that same night through her statement. Donna and I pressed full charges the following morning, Jeffrey. Our son, the boy I'd taught to drive in the parking lot of Savannah State on a Sunday morning in 1999, was charged with conspiracy, elder financial abuse, fraud, and forgery. Renee faced the same charges plus a separate count for the fabricated power of attorney. Dr. Turn, Basse was charged with fraud, filing false medical reports, and professional misconduct. Clement Hearst, arrested at his home in Bluffton at 6 the following morning, faced federal fraud charges and conspiracy. Our daughter Trish drove back from Columbia when she heard. She sat at our kitchen table until 2 in the morning, and I watched her work through it the same way Donna had. The shock, the grief, the anger, and then something resolute. "What do we do about the others?" she said, which was almost word for word what Donna had asked. The others. Detective Meade had given us names. 6 families. 6 people in facilities they hadn't chosen, managed by relatives who'd used the same playbook Jeffrey and Renee had tried to use on me. One of them had been there for nearly a year. His name was Albert Greer, 77 years old, retired schoolteacher from Brunswick, Georgia, with 43 years of lesson plans in his garage and a vegetable garden he'd tended since 1987. His daughter had placed him at Cedar Bluff Memory Care in Statesboro 11 months earlier, supported by a fraudulent evaluation from Dr. Fosse. Albert had no memory impairment. He had no cognitive decline. He had a daughter who'd found Clement Hearst's website and decided a $580,000 house and a teacher's pension were worth more than her father's freedom. We visited him on a Thursday afternoon. Donna brought tomato seedlings because Detective Meade had mentioned the garden. Cedar Bluff was nicer than I'd expected and more depressing for it. Fresh paint, soft music, a receptionist with a practiced smile, and a sign-in sheet she watched us fill out with visible attention. Albert's room was on the 2nd floor, facing a parking lot. He was sitting in a chair by the window reading a history of the Pacific War, and when we knocked, he looked up the way someone looks up when they've stopped expecting anyone to come. Donna introduced us. She told him how we'd heard his name. She put the tomato seedlings on his windowsill. Albert looked at them for a long time. "I have a raised bed at home," he said. "My daughter says the house is rented now. I don't know who's tending it." He wasn't confused. He wasn't disoriented. He told us the exact date, the current president, the last 3 books he'd read. He told us he'd filed a complaint with the facility director in September and been told his family held legal authority over his living arrangements. He told us he'd written to an attorney in October and never received a response. He had a notebook on his side table, pages of documentation, dates, names, every irregularity he'd observed since arriving. 43 years of teaching had made him methodical. "I keep records," he said, "because I know that's what you do when no one believes you." I asked if he would be willing to work with an attorney to challenge the guardianship. His expression shifted into something I can only describe as a person deciding whether hope is worth the risk. "Yes," he said, "I would very much like to do that." We found a legal aid attorney through the Georgia Legal Services Program. Her name was Priya Nair, and she was 29 years old and had the particular manner of someone who has decided to spend their career on cases other people consider too complicated. She reviewed Albert's documentation in one sitting. "This is unusable as a guardianship basis," she said, meaning Dr. Foss's evaluation. "The underlying clinical contact doesn't exist. He assessed no one." She filed the challenge in under 2 weeks. The other 5 cases took longer. 2 of them involved families who contested the reversal aggressively, hiring attorneys and filing counter-documentation. One case had layered guardianship, primary and backup, requiring separate legal actions. Priya worked all 6 simultaneously for 4 months, updating Donna and me every Friday afternoon. Donna had started what she called a file. It was initially a folder. By month 2, it was a banker's box. By month 4, it was a system organized by case, cross-referenced with Clement Hurst's client records, which law enforcement had obtained through the investigation. She tracked every court filing, every attorney communication, every development in each of the 6 cases. She learned the Georgia Adult Protective Services reporting system well enough to explain it to other families. She started attending hearings when the families permitted it. Ivy came on weekends during her school semester. She'd built a spreadsheet. Of course she had. She's 16 and systematic, tracking all 6 cases with status columns and deadline dates and contact information for each person's attorney. She updated it from her phone, sitting at our dining room table on Saturday mornings with a glass of orange juice, her grandmother across from her reviewing documents. They made a good team. They still do. Albert Greer was released from Cedar Bluff on a Wednesday in March, 4 months after our first visit. Priya called us from the courthouse parking lot, and we could hear Albert in the background saying something. We couldn't make out the words, but we could hear the sound of it, which was enough. He went home. The renters had vacated. A neighbor had quietly maintained his garden through the winter. The tomato bed was dormant, but intact. All 6 individuals had been freed by the time the trial date was set. The trial was in April. Federal courtroom in Savannah. Judge named the Honorable Walter R. Ingram, who had the particular stillness of someone who has heard every kind of lie and is no longer impressed by any of them. The courtroom was full. Family members of the 6 other victims sat in rows. Priya Nair sat with 3 colleagues from legal aid. Albert Greer sat 2 rows behind us in a button-down shirt with a small seedling pin on the lapel that Donna had found for him online. Clement Hurst was sentenced first. 19 years federal. No parole for 12. He sat through his sentencing without expression, which was somehow worse than if he'd shown anything at all. Dr. Marcus Foss, who had filed fraudulent evaluations in 7 cases, whose professional license was the instrument of 6 people's imprisonment, 15 years, license permanently revoked. He looked at the floor. He didn't look at Albert. He didn't look at any of the people whose lives he'd fractured. Renee, 16 years, eligible for parole after 10. She stared straight ahead the entire time. She didn't look at Ivy. Jeffrey. I watched my son stand for sentencing. He's 41 years old, and he had his mother's easy smile when he was a boy, and I taught him to throw a spiral in our backyard in 1993. Judge Ingram read the charges and the evidence summary and the victim impact statements. Donna had submitted 3 pages, every word precise, and then sentenced him to 18 years, eligible for parole after 12. Jeffrey looked at me once. Not at Donna, not at Ivy. At me. I don't know what he was looking for. I didn't have anything left to give him in that moment. Ivy sat between us during sentencing. She didn't cry. Afterward, in the parking lot, with Savannah's April heat already building, she stood very still for a moment and then said, "He looked right at you, Grandpa." I said I knew. She said, "Are you okay?" I thought about it honestly, the way the question deserved. "Not right now," I said, "but I think I will be." She nodded. She's 16 and she accepted that answer completely, which told me she'd thought about it herself. Trish took Ivy home that evening. She calls every Sunday. Some weeks she talks mostly to Donna. Some weeks she talks mostly to me. Some weeks she talks to both of us for an hour and a half about nothing in particular. Which are the best weeks? Ivy sees a counselor on Thursdays. She says it helps. She came to visit last month and spent an afternoon in our backyard with Donna going through seed catalogs, which is Donna's version of therapy and apparently works for 16-year-olds too. Albert Greer came to dinner in May. He brought tomatoes from his first spring planting, and Donna made a salad, and we sat on the back porch until the fireflies started. He told us about his first week home, the particular feeling of sleeping in his own bed again, unlocking his own front door, making coffee at the hour he preferred. He said he'd told his story to a reporter from the Savannah Morning News, and the reporter had gotten it wrong in a way that was somehow still accurate. She wrote that I kept records, he said, because that's the detail people remember. He tapped the table. Keep records. That's the lesson. He's right. That's part of it. The other part is a 16-year-old girl who recorded 3 minutes and 40 seconds in a hallway because something felt wrong and she didn't know what else to do. I think about that a lot. Ivy didn't have legal training. She didn't have a plan. She had instinct and her grandmother's stubbornness and the presence of mind to press record. She walked back into a dinner party carrying evidence that could have destroyed her relationship with her parents if Jeffrey and Renee had found out. And she carried it directly to the person who needed it, and she stayed steady all night in a situation that would have broken most adults. She doesn't want credit for it. Every time I try to tell her what it meant, she changes the subject. Last month she mentioned, almost as an aside, that she was thinking about law school eventually. Something in the elder law space. There are a lot of Alberts, she said, meaning it practically, the way she says most things. There are. We're still finding them. The work Donna started with a folder in a banker's box has become something more formal now. We incorporated as a nonprofit in February. The Sarah K. Nair Foundation was already taken, so we chose something simpler, Clear Title Inc., not a glamorous name. Donna says it doesn't need to be glamorous. It needs to be clear. We have 8 active cases in Georgia. Brian Nair consults with us formally 2 days a week. Ivy built the intake database over spring break. Donna runs the case management. I handle communications and the parts that require someone who looks trustworthy, which my contractor friends say has always been my best professional skill. Last Tuesday I got a voicemail from a man in Macon, 73 years old. His daughter had been asking him to sign documents. His son-in-law was a financial advisor who'd recently become very interested in how the house was titled. His granddaughter, 14 years old, had heard a phone conversation and written down everything she'd heard and given the notes to him because she didn't know what else to do. I called him back the same afternoon. I told him his granddaughter had done the right thing. I told him to keep every document. I told him not to sign anything until he'd spoken to an attorney, and I gave him Priya's number. And I told him what I tell everyone who calls us now. You are not alone. You are not crazy. The instinct that told you something was wrong. Trust it. It was right. And the people who love you enough to speak up when it costs them something, hold on to them. They're the ones who save you. They saved me. At my own retirement dinner, in a coat room that smelled like cedar, a 16-year-old girl with shaking hands saved my life. If this story reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell me where you're listening from. You might be surprised how many people are sitting in the same fear, wondering if they're imagining things. They're not. Neither were you. Neither was I. I've had 4 months now to sit with what happened at Forsyth Park Inn. Some nights, I go over it slowly, the way you replay a near-miss accident after the adrenaline settles. Not to punish yourself, just to understand how close it came. What I keep coming back to isn't Jeffrey. It isn't even the sentence, or the courtroom, or the moment I watched officers walk my son out of my own retirement party. What I keep coming back to is a 16-year-old girl standing in a coat room with shaking hands, holding her phone out to me, saying, I didn't know what else to do. She knew exactly what to do. She just didn't have a name for it yet. There's something I've learned about the way these things unfold. And I don't mean the legal mechanics, I mean the human ones. The people who cause this kind of harm almost never think of themselves as causing harm. Jeffrey had a story. In his story, he was a practical son making difficult decisions his sentimental father couldn't make for himself. Renee had a story too. She'd probably told it so many times it felt like the truth. That's the thing about choosing greed over people. It requires a narrative. You have to build one and maintain it, and the maintaining takes more energy than most people realize, which is why it tends to collapse under the weight of a single voice recorder and a teenager who pays attention. Ivy paid attention because she was taught to. Trish raised her to trust what she felt in her gut before she had the words to explain it. Donna spent 16 years being the kind of grandmother who makes a person want to protect her. None of that was accidental. The courage Ivy showed that night didn't come from nowhere. It was the product of every honest conversation. Every time someone in our family told the truth when it would have been easier not to. That's what I mean when I say this isn't just a story about what Jeffrey did. It's a story about what gets built over decades. Quietly, without fanfare. Character, instinct, the willingness to do the hard thing when the moment asks for it. Ivy didn't hesitate because she'd been given a foundation that made hesitating feel like the wrong choice. That's not luck. That's the result of people doing the slow, unglamorous work of raising someone well. And Albert Greer, 77 years old in a room facing a parking lot, keeping a notebook because 43 years of teaching had made him believe that documentation mattered even when no one was listening. That's not defeat. That's a man who understood that giving up would mean proving the people who wronged him were right about him. He refused. His refusal made it possible for Priya to build a case. His refusal made it possible for him to go home. What I want to say, and I mean it plainly, is this. The outcomes in this story happened because multiple people chose to stay decent under pressure. Ivy chose her grandmother over her parents' approval. Albert chose documentation over despair. Donna chose advocacy over retreat. None of those choices were easy. All of them were deliberate. The people who tried to take what wasn't theirs are now paying a price proportionate to what they attempted to take. That's not a philosophical abstraction. That's just how it works. The actions you choose build the life you end up living, and the people you're willing to harm to get what you want will eventually be the people who define your legacy. Mine is a granddaughter who wants to study elder law. I'll take that.